Before we get into this video, I just want to give a big thank you to Pixel Pete, Reece Geofroy, yes, that's how you pronounce his last name, or at least I think it is, Goodgis, and my close friends Nick and Taha for helping out. Anyways, let's get straight into it. Alright, so I'm just going to jump into the first tip here, and my first tip to all you pixel art beginners out there is don't compare yourself to others that are ahead of you. You can look at other people's artwork and admire them, sure, that's perfectly okay. But if you start comparing your own beginner style artwork to other people who've been doing pixel art for a lot longer, you're inherently going to get the feeling that, oh, their artwork is really good and mine's not, which isn't always the truth in retrospect. Now you'll also get that feeling that, oh, theirs is really good, there's no way I'm going to be able to get up to their level. But trust me, if you keep trying, keep practicing, and keep going at it, you'll eventually get to their level, and maybe even surpass it. So just don't compare yourself to others, it's never a good thing to do, and you always want to keep looking on the bright side of things.
Hey, I'm Pixel Pete. I'm one of the developers working on Dwarf. For Dwarf, I had to learn how to do pixel art, and quick. So I have a quick tip for you on how to learn pixel art the same way that I learned it. It's actually how I learned any art style. When you're first starting to learn pixel art, if you're not an excellent artist, draw small sprites. For example, instead of doing 32 by 32 or 64 by 64, do 16 by 16. Because the smaller that your sprites are, the less detail they require. And usually, if you're not a great artist, the details is where you have trouble. So it's easier to get away with making things look good if you draw them small.
Hey guys, it's back to me for this next tip. But anyway, getting straight into it, the next tip that I have all for you is to simply experiment. If you never experiment, you're never really going to develop a style when it comes to pixel art. But there's so many things that you can experiment with. Experiment with different kinds of resolutions, different colors, different palettes, and different types of line work as well. Different shading techniques. There's a lot of different things that you can experiment with, and in fact, I even have a video on line work. You should definitely go check it out once you're done watching this one. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But it kind of goes over the fundamentals of that, and it just goes to show how much you can experiment with pixel art. And the more you experiment, the more you'll find what you like and what you're good at, and eventually you'll settle into your style. Anyways, for this next tip, I'm going to hand it off to Goodgis for it. And special thanks to my good friend Taha for editing Goodgis' part of the video.
Hey guys, Goodgis here. Today I just want to give you a few tips of what really helped me when I started out with pixel art. I think the first thing is just finding software that really works with you. I used to use MS Paint for a lot of this stuff that I did, and it worked perfectly fine. So if you don't want to spend money and don't feel intimidated like you need to use something like Sprite or Pixel Edit or any of the industry standard, while those are nice and they have a lot of tools, you can get started just in Paint, and it's fantastic. And if you're trying to learn a particular style or you want to make a game in a particular style, study that artwork. That's the best way of learning how to do it. For example, if you're a big fan of Pokemon, download some images and just try to recreate step by step what they're doing. Look at how they do their shading. Even recreate it pixel by pixel just so you start to understand the fundamentals of how they're doing it. And if you do that with a couple different games, you'll find that you'll develop a style pretty quickly and you'll grow really fast without having to know all the nitty-gritty details of lighting and color and gestalt theory. It's crazy. Think about it, as babies, we learn through imitation. So by imitating people that know what they're doing, you'll actually learn pretty quickly. With that said, I would be careful about posting that stuff or making games with that artwork, especially if you're directly copying something, because ultimately you don't want to end up plagiarizing someone else.
Hey guys, back to me. Are you getting sick of me yet? I hope not, because I'm gonna be here for a little bit longer after this. Anyway, for my own third tip, I want to talk about palettes and using low spec. Now, at first, choosing colors isn't always going to be the best thing. It's going to be a little hard for you, and it was a little hard for me and probably everyone else. You don't know all the fundamentals of color theory and hue shading yet, so you really don't know exactly how to pick colors and what you want to do with them. But there's this lovely website called LowSpec where you can go on and choose any palette that you want that are already pre-made for you by a ton of different experienced pixel artists. There's so many different palettes on there that you can choose from, and you can even search for different ones with different numbers of colors or different feels to them with different keywords. It's a great place to look if you're looking for a palette, and I highly suggest using palettes when you're first starting out. Eventually, when you get more experience, you can get rid of that crutch, as you may call it, of the palettes and start choosing your own colors. But even so, to this day, I still like using palettes that I really love. In fact, Pear 36 is one that I still use a lot of, and you can see it in most of my newer artworks. Anyways, next up we're going to Reece Geofroy. Yes, as I said in the beginning, that is how you pronounce his last name. At least I'm pretty sure, with his tip.
Hey guys, my name is Reece and I have been developing video games for over 4 years. I just went full-time last year, so here is my tip for getting better at pixel art. When you are learning pixel art, make sure to look at real-world references just as much as pixelated ones. Referencing your work is super important to get the best results quickly, but being able to interpret a pixel drawing from real-world examples will help you actually learn the shape and form much faster. If you only look at other people's pixel art when drawing, you will get heavily influenced and may find yourself copying way too much of the reference work. Look at examples that came before you, but again, mix in some real-world examples so you can better understand why something was drawn the way it was in the first place. Stay creative and keep practicing.
Hey guys, it's me again for the 4th time in this whole video. And I'm actually going to be talking about more of the pixel art technique now instead of a pixel art tip, although you could call it a tip if you really wanted to. But it's using uneven or jaggy lines. Now, if you can see on screen, hopefully I'm putting up, is an example of someone, or probably myself, who has used an uneven or jaggy line with extra pixels, or as I like to call them, doubles. Now these can be used in good ways, but for the most part they don't always look the best when you're going for a clean outline. Now, as I stated earlier, I have an outline and line work tutorial that's really good for this kind of stuff, and I go into way more detail as to how they can be used properly in that video. So once you're done with this video, if you're still curious about this kind of stuff, you can definitely go check that one out. But yes, I do see a lot of beginners try to make their lines by just freehand drawing, which will eventually lead to them having extra pixels or doubles and having uneven lines, which doesn't always look the greatest. Now, of course, it's pretty simple to fix. You just have to get rid of the extra pixels that you don't need, and it makes the line look a lot nicer. Anyway, for the next tip, I thought that we could use someone who's maybe a bit more of a beginner in pixel art.
Hello, I'm Nick, and I'm here to talk about free pixel art editing softwares. Well, first off, you don't have to buy one. It's not necessary at all. You can use MS Paint, as Goodgis said. You can also use Piskel, Pixiliart. Those are the only two that I know of at this current moment. I started on Piskel, so did Nova. It's very good. You have all the colors, you can insert your own colors, you have all those good tools that you can use. Asebright does have a little more, but I would suggest using one of those online softwares before you actually dedicate yourself and your own money to actually buying a software. Especially if you're a beginner, I would suggest using one of those free softwares. You can use Pixiliart. I've never used it, but I've heard it's good, so I would either suggest using that or Piskel.
Alright guys, back with me for another tip. This is more of a technique rather than a tip like last time, but it doesn't matter. I still think it will help beginners in any way that it possibly can. And that's when shading an object, doesn't matter any object, if you want it to look like it's popping out in 3D or have a very professional looking shading design, you really want to think of the object in 3D space. And as Reece was saying, you can even just go into the real world, find an object that you're looking at, put it up to the light or get some kind of light where you want it to be. So if you, in your pixel art piece, take an apple, if the light is coming from above, shine a light on it coming from above and see how the light is reflecting off of it and where it's being shaded. Think of the object as it's in 3-dimensional space. And as I was saying, even get an actual object if you have it. If you don't, think of the object. Put the object in your mind and put the light source in your mind. How does the light reflect on it? Where's the shading? What color is the shading? How does the shine reflect off of it? If you think of the object in 3D space, it will be a lot easier to shade it properly and to have a professional looking, almost 3D looking shading. Now obviously it won't actually look 3D because it's pixel art, so you're really not going to get that realistic, but it doesn't matter as long as it looks that professional. It'll make it look 10 times better when it comes to that. Alright guys, now it's time for the last and final tip that I have for all of you guys before we end off the video. And that is, don't be afraid to ask for help. Getting help is perfectly okay. Post your art in different places and ask for feedback. Say, hey, I made this not too long ago and I was wondering if you could give me some feedback on it. In fact, one of my most recent art pieces, an art piece for the Brackies Game Jam, was constantly being fueled by a lot of my friends looking at it and be like, oh, you should change this, or oh, that looks a little off. So it's really, really helpful to get feedback, especially from people who are experienced in art or in pixel art or in that general art field. And watch tutorials. Don't be afraid to watch tutorials about things. It's perfectly okay if you need help, that you need help. So you can go out, watch tutorials, see how they do it, and then you can come back and use the tutorials to your advantage. So don't be afraid to go out, ask for help, get reference, watch tutorials. It's all perfectly okay as long as you're learning. Alright guys, that's gonna end it off for this video. I all hope you enjoyed the video. This has gotta be one of my favorite videos that I've made so far. And I have to say, once again, a big thanks to everyone who helped out, being Pixel Pete, Reece Geofroy. Once again, yes, that's how you pronounce his last name. At least I'm pretty sure it is. Goodgis and my two good friends, Taha and Nick. Anyway, I really hope you learned something, and I really hope this video can help you. And if it didn't, let me know what else you could learn about. Tell me what you thought of the video and what other tips that you might have added if you were helping out. Anyway guys, once again, I really hope you enjoyed it and learned something from the video, but I gotta head out, so see ya everyone.